Welcome to Sentence Structure Part 1, Punctuation. Sentence structure questions are asking you how the writer gets his or her message across. So they will look something like, look at the first paragraph and explain how the writer's sentence structure helps to emphasise his or her views. You're not being asked what the views are, you're asked how the sentence structure helps to emphasise or support what the writer is saying. And what I'm hoping after this lesson is that you can see how certain features of punctuation can really help you answer sentence structure questions. One of the easiest ones to spot is a question mark. And writers can use questions for several different purposes, and we want to look at 3 here. Firstly, to engage the reader, to get them thinking about the topic. So, for example, what do you think of spiders? Different people are going to think different things. Some people love them, some people hate them. But it could also be a persuasive question, a question that is pushing you to one side or the other, and that's what we call a rhetorical question. What could be worse than finding a spider on your pillow? And the point of this question is to get you to think it would be absolutely terrible, even if normally you're not the kind of person who's that bothered by spiders. And if you are freaked out by spiders, that's a particularly horrible question to ask. You could also use a question to link from one part of your essay to the next. So we could have a question like this. We know that spiders will not hurt us, so why do we worry about them so much? And we can imagine that the first part of the essay was probably about why spiders don't hurt human beings, and the second part is going to be about why we're so scared of them anyway. Next piece of punctuation is the colon. So a colon looks like one full stop on top of another full stop, and I like to think of it like a drum roll. Imagine those are the ends of 2 drumsticks, and you've got a little drum roll, because the colon suggests that something's going to happen, a list or a further development. So, for example, we have there are 3 kinds of lies, colon, drum roll, lies, damned lies, and statistics. So we get to the end of there are 3 kinds of lies, and it's then, what could those 3 kinds of lies be, you are thinking? The colon is a little drum roll, then you find out, and it happens to be in the form of a list, but it could just be a further development. Be very careful about assuming it'll be a list. You have to read the sentence and check, but it will be some kind of development from the first sentence that you get before the colon. Lies, damned lies, and statistics. We have a list, we have a rule of 3, we have a kind of humorous thing here because we think that statistics are true, and the point the writer is making here is actually statistics can also be used to deceive people. Now, the further development is the key thing here. It happens to be a list, it may not always be. Now, the semicolon looks quite similar to the colon. It's got a full stop, but underneath is a comma. It's actually much more unusual than a colon. It's very unlikely that you'll see a semicolon, but if you do, there will almost certainly be something clever to say about it. And the way to think of it is it's kind of a cross between a full stop and a comma. It's a soft full stop when it separates sentences, grammatical sentences, I mean. But it can also separate items on a list, where it works as perhaps a slightly stronger comma if the list items are quite lengthy. A semicolon rather than a comma can make it a bit clearer for the reader that these are items on a list. So here we've got a couple of sentences, and it's really about the way in which being able to make a film is so much easier than it ever used to be. Say 100 years ago, if you wanted to make a film, you needed millions of pounds and cinemas and cameras and actors and actresses. And now anybody can go and make a film in a couple of minutes and put it on an online website and anybody can watch it. Making a film was democratised by tech advances a decade back. All that remained were the traditional gatekeepers blocking the path to distribution. So the two sentences are one about how you make a film, two, how you get people to see it. And because they're quite closely related, the writer has chosen to use a semicolon rather than a full stop to separate them. Next sentence, we've got a colon, indicating that a list or further development is coming. As they collapse, new channels will emerge. What are those new channels? What are those new channels? Drum roll, drum roll. Vimeo with better curation, semicolon. TikTok with crowdfunding add-ons. So here, the semicolon doesn't divide two grammatical sentences. It divides two items on a list. And finally, we have the dash. Now, the dash can do a number of different things. The job of a colon, or the semicolon, or the brackets, or it can create a dramatic pause. So, for example, I looked down, dash, and saw the most amazing sight. Now, you don't need the dash there. It'd be absolutely fine to write that sentence as, I looked down and saw the most amazing sight. But when you put the dash in, it creates a pause, it creates a little bit of drama, which is quite effective. You could use it to introduce a further development or a list, just as you could with a colon. You can use them in pairs to do exactly what you might do with brackets, adding extra information, a humorous aside, the author's opinion, just as you can use brackets, or sometimes commas. Quite hard to spot when it's commas. Now, the one piece of punctuation we have not really covered is the comma, and that is because commas are used so widely to separate units of meaning that they don't tend to contribute very much to sentence structure at all. I have been told that commas slow you down and make it sad. They speed it up and make it happy. Or even that they tell you when to breathe. Now, it's silent reading, you can breathe at any time. Most of you breathe very successfully when you're asleep, when there are no commas to be seen whatsoever. So, commas are not really doing any of these things. They can't both make it sad and make it happy. If you see a lot of commas, the question you should be asking yourself is, could this be a list? And if it's a list, you know what lists emphasise? They emphasise range and number, and that should be your answer to the sentence structure question. So, you should have learned by now that if you see a question mark, a colon, a semicolon, or a dash, or dashes, you will always be able to say something good about the sentence structure.